Q&A. Everything you need to know about post-training reinforcement. There is a lot of knowledge about post-training reinforcement and why it is such an important factor in behavior improvement, on-the-job implementation of training, and enhanced return on investment. The next questions that I'll address will assist you in better understanding what you can do to effectively reinforce employee preparation. First, what is training reinforcement? Training reinforcement involves providing strategic content as a training follow up using the spacing effect to help the brain recall information and transfer it to long term memory. Post training reinforcement supports behavior change and on the job application by increasing a learner's retention of knowledge gained during training. Next, why do I need to reinforce employee training? The object of training is for people to learn, but learning is not an event, it's a process. As trainers, we can learn much from neuroscientists about how to strengthen connections between the neurons in the brains of our learners. In an article with Training Industry, Cynthia Clay describes the learning process in these four steps: learn it, encode it, recall it, and apply it. You are exposed to new informations in learn it, and then you begin to transfer that information from short-term to long-term memory in encode it, and then you retrieve it from short-term or long-term memory in recall it. And lastly, you firmly anchor that new knowledge in long-term memory through apply it. When employee training only addresses the first step in that process and the learner needs to use the information several days later, a lack of training reinforcement means they won't be able to recall what was learned and use it on the job. Without training reinforcement, the brain has no indication that the information learned is important to keep, and its natural cognitive processes will flush that information away instead of transferring it to long-term memory for future use. How much do people forget after training? While there are several factors that go into the amount of forgetting that happens after learning something, the research indicates that people forget approximately 50% of training within just 1 hour and 70% at 24 hours. Within 30 days, that amount of forgetting increases to 90%. The forgetting curve developed by psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus demonstrates how quickly memory retention drops after learning new information. Ebbinghaus' forgetting curve describes the decrease in ability of the brain to retain memory over time. The theory is that humans start losing the memory of learned knowledge over time in a matter of days or weeks unless the learned knowledge is consciously reviewed time and again. How much does it cost if we skip training reinforcement? When your employees don't have any follow-up to training, your program is losing 50 to 90% of resources spent on learning. It's just being flushed away by the brain's memory processes. Compare that percentage to your training budget and you can see that skipping out on post-training reinforcement is definitely not cost-effective. Next, how can we make sure employees will retain what they've learned during training? To ensure training isn't forgotten before employees have a chance to use what they've learned on the job, you want to use Ebbinghaus theory of space retrieval. This means sending boosts at periodic intervals after training. The brain will naturally forget what it isn't using, so to prevent that from happening, a boost will force the learner to recall the training and signal to the brain that this is important information worth keeping. With this kind of process, you can systematically help your employees to move training from the forgettable short-term memory into the long-term memory. That's how they learn new skills and improve performance. Where should I start with creating training reinforcement? In order to save the time it takes to set up post-training reinforcement manually, a simple answer to this conundrum is investing in technology to automate the process for you. There are a few out there that have different features, so looking into that option is a great place to start and get the ball rolling. What kind of content should I use to reinforce training? The goal of training reinforcement is to extend the learning process and provide content that allows the learner to think critically about how they'll apply that new knowledge on the job. In a study by Dr. Henry Rodiger and Dr. Jeffrey Karpicki, they found out that participants who were tested on material several times fared much better than those who only studied the same material when it came to long-term learning retention. For training reinforcement to be most effective for your employees, you want to use content that tests them on what they've learned and helps the brain apply that information in new ways. Types of post-training reinforcement content should include multiple choice, which is a question type where the respondent is asked to choose one or more items from a limited list of choices. Short answer questions, which are open-ended questions that require the respondent to create an answer. Poll questions, which is a way of knowing people's choices and understanding what works for them. Micro video on similar topics, which are short video clips often created through a micro video social media platform such as Vine, Instagram, or Snapchat, and thought questions. But always remember that multiple choice and short answer questions are best for early follow-up, while thought questions should be sent later within your reinforcement program. This allows the learner time to absorb the information, think through its application, and experience it on the job. What are the best intervals for reinforcing training effectively? A good outline to follow is sending boosts 2 days after training, then 7 days after, then 14 days after, and 1 month after. This is also known as 2, 7, 14, and 30 intervals. The research on space retrieval by Ebbinghaus showed that learning retention improves after some forgetting has occurred. This is why if you cram for a test the night before, then don't use the information again after that. A month later, you'll have forgotten nearly all of it. Sending boosts in space intervals helps learners recall information after some forgetting has occurred, which in turn strengthens the memory for the next time it's needed. Should training reinforcement questions be easy or difficult to answer? When you're sending questions to help someone recall what they've learned, making it too easy is not helpful. The goal there is to force the brain to remember even if it's difficult and they answer the question incorrectly. Correctness is not the point with training reinforcement questions. If the learner does answer incorrectly, be sure to provide the correct answer right away. How can we keep employees accountable with completing training reinforcement? No matter what type of training you're delivering, the easiest way to track completion of reinforcement questions is by utilizing a post-training reinforcement platform. This means that you can keep employees accountable with completing training reinforcement through focusing with the results of the training, especially how the question has been answered by utilizing a post-training reinforcement platform. How can we make sure employees are changing behaviors after they go through a course? Manager involvement is an important aspect of making sure training sticks. Managers need to be aware of the training that has taken place and the expected behavior changes from that training so they can observe whether or not the training has proven effective. You can also include thought questions with your training reinforcement program where you ask for the learner's perspective on how they put the training into practice. This will give you a well-rounded picture of your training program's results. Is there technology available to help me automate post-training reinforcement? Utilizing training reinforcement technology is certainly the simplest way to ensure your training program is maximizing return on investment. Whether you're looking for a full platform to customize and deliver your own post-training reinforcement, or you need a content library with this capability built in, there are training reinforcement tools to fit your needs. There are some online tools or websites that can help you to build a reinforcement program with how you like it. Once your employees are enrolled, you choose when and what type of booster to send them. And when employees interact with the boost, reports and dashboards will begin to populate individual and team analytics.